Hi, Chris.
First up, you're restricted. A lot of business, especially tourism, of course, is constrained in Queensland by these border closures. There's some sort of a plan from Anastasia Palaszczuk to open up. No one really knows what the rules will be, especially for the unvaccinated. Is the federal government just losing patience with states like Queensland doing so much unnecessary economic damage?
Look, the federal government is frustrated with it, but more importantly, Queenslanders are frustrated with it. And as we go into the last 6 weeks before Christmas, what should be the peak of the retail and tourism time of year, none of those businesses have the certainty they need to be able to make business planning decisions, to make staff hiring decisions, and to be able to make the most of what should be their prime time. They are told that the state government has a plan, but the reality is they get no clarity on what the arrangements will be for giving them certainty about customers being able to move about in a way that allows them to shop or to use tourist attractions. There's no certainty about the border. There's no certainty about whether or not the state government intends to impose draconian separations like we've seen proposed for some other states. And leaving businesses in the dark like this is compounding 2 years' worth of serious economic damage that has been inflicted in large part excessively by the state government.
Yeah, it's a terrible situation because we're supposed to be able to open up all these borders at 80%. We've got a national 80% vaccination, but some states are dragging their heels, of course. I'll just show you what the Prime Minister said today. He was talking about Western Australia's border controls, but obviously it applies elsewhere. Here's Scott Morrison.
Once you go over 80% and you keep things locked down, you are doing more harm than good to your economy. You are actually putting a price on Australians when you continue to put heavy restrictions on your economy once you hit 80% vaccination rate. So the national plan was a deal with Australians. My government is keeping our part of that deal. Australians are keeping their part of that deal.
Yeah, Scott Morrison there, Senator. We've seen in New South Wales and Victoria that when you open up at 80%, there's no spike in cases. It's all manageable. What can Canberra do to force the hand of states like Queensland and Western Australia?
Well, we can keep telling it like it is, making sure that those state governments that refuse to engage with the evidence that shows there is no greater risk to public health associated with opening up in circumstances where we've hit 80% vaccination levels. Those are facts. And so we need to, as political servants of the people, make sure that we hold state governments to account on that front. But importantly, I can see from today's press that members of the Australian business community are starting to step up too. And it's good to see the arguments that people like me have been making in recent times about how the border restrictions that are being put in place in WA, in Queensland and historically elsewhere are no longer proportionate to the nature of the threat that is faced by Australians, and accordingly they represent an unconstitutional breach of our Constitution, of Section 92. So it's really good to see citizens and the businesses they run starting to drive some accountability from state governments to complement that which is being pushed from the federal level.
Should the federal government support that legal action in some way?
Well, these things are most compelling, I think, when they are drawn from the community simply because that is the way that you show the real harm that's being done. It's very difficult as a government to demonstrate the nature of the harm that's necessary to win that proportionality argument. But what we can do and what we have been doing is driving that accountability through National Cabinet and through public channels to make sure Australians understand that we're holding up our end of the deal that was struck with Australians through the National Plan, and every Premier signed up to it. Those who want to change the goalposts after the fact or play games, political or otherwise, with the livelihoods and freedoms and the ability of families to get on with their lives should be held harshly accountable.
This is going to be fascinating to watch because it's going to play out in the lead up, particularly in Western Australia, but also in Queensland in the lead up to a federal election in the first half of next year.